Now you've got extra money. If those commissions and bonuses come in, you can set that aside. And same thing with the sale, right? If you've got equity in your home, don't forget about that, because that's a huge piece that you can basically just pick up from the sale of the current home, pick it right up and just put it right down for the purchase of the next home. So
are you a second-time home buyer who's ready to dive headfirst into homeownership again? Well, today we're going to be exploring the second home buying options for people, whether that's a second mortgage or just a second home, so you can explore the process with confidence. Today, I'm joined by Brandon Vogler, who is a loan officer with Movement Mortgage. He's been a Charlottean for over a decade, went to UNCC, and thanks for joining us today, Brandon.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
By all means. So with second mortgages, the number one question that I've gotten from home buyers is, what are the options that are available to people that are buying their second home, either as a second-time home buyer or taking out a second mortgage? What are those options, and how do they differ from going through that process for the first time?
You know, typically as a first-time home buyer, you have a lot more options available when it comes to variations of down payment, programs that can assist with that, and really just some pieces that a second-time home purchase just really isn't built for. And the reason for that is obviously, normally when you're doing a first-time home purchase, you're typically younger, you're typically not as advanced in your career. You know, the income may not be as far along as, a typical second-time home buyer, but there's still great options for a second-time home purchase, whether it is, again, like you said, just buying or upgrading to another home and selling the one you currently have, or if you want to be more of a real estate tycoon and start building your portfolio a little bit, buying a second home or even investment home. There's a lot of options.
And so particularly for someone that is trying to do that transition from their first home to their second home, from a lending perspective, what difference is there between whether they buy and then sell, or sell and then buy, or do it all at the same time? What does that look like as far as their ability to purchase?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when it comes to buying a second home, whether it's an upgraded home or you just, time of life really changes. We can do it a couple different ways. We can do it to where you qualify for both mortgages at the same time. And as long as the numbers work out, you really don't have to sell the first home if you want to. You can figure that out after you purchase the second one. We can also do it at the same time, which that's typically the normal route people go, is kind of a simultaneous close. So a lot of times you'll try to line it up to where, you close on the home maybe on a Friday morning that you're selling yours, and then later that afternoon you're closing on the purchase of the second one. So either way, it's really just whatever is best fit for, the customer or the person in that scenario, in that, situation. But either option works. It just kind of depends on what it calls for.
So have there been any times where clients ran into issues with that, and then how were both you and then your realtor partner able to help them work through that? Because, nothing ever goes perfect.
Yes. So the tough part, I would say, with the simultaneous close is making sure that as a seller, the person buying your home has all the ducks in a row, right? Because it can almost be a chain reaction. If they're trying to buy your home, they're getting financing through a lender, and things go crazy with that, then now you have to delay the sale of your home, to purchase the second one. Now, if that tie and that, I call it the domino effect, basically. But if you don't have to have that first home sold, then you got a little bit of an easier path. But I've seen plenty of times where it's a simultaneous close, and it's not to scare anybody. This is a very common thing, but just making sure from the selling side of the transaction, as opposed to now parlaying that into purchasing the second one, just making sure that upfront piece of you selling your home has got everything lined up. That way, if you do need the proceeds, or that mortgage needs to be paid off in order for you to qualify on the new one, you've got all that taken care of, and then you're not scrambling trying to figure out, oh crap, now I've got to figure out how to get this sold in order to get the new one purchased. So it can be a fun route, but that one's typically the more common one, and that's the one we normally do. But I have seen it where folks will just go ahead and say, hey, I don't need the proceeds, I don't need to worry about getting rid of this mortgage. Let's go ahead and get this other home first.
Absolutely. And the reason I bring that up too is because this is something I've been through several times recently, actually, with different clients. Of one of those first questions, if you currently own a home, one of the first questions before you can really start to explore your options on the buy side is, do you need to sell your home before you can close on a new one? Because that, how we manage, whether you're buying new construction or resale, how we manage that process is going to change in order to make sure that you do have a smooth transition into your new home. So to transition over a little bit, how do the down payment options differ between a first-time home buyer and then someone that's looking for that second home, either as a second home to own simultaneously or as a, just buying their second home after they've sold their first?
Yeah. So, typically, like it's normally done, a first-time home purchase, this is going to be anywhere from 3 to 5% for a first-time home buyer. Now, when you get into the second home range or even the investment range, that's going to differ. So, if it's going to be your primary residence and you're going to sell, your previous primary, it's still just going to be a 5% down payment. So, you technically don't have the option of that 3% anymore, but you still can go as little as 5% down as long as the new home is going to be the primary residence. If you get into that range where you're looking at maybe just having a second home, like a vacation home, or like an investment, the second home down payment minimum is going to be 10%, and then the investment is going to actually be 15%. And typically people that are buying investment homes, they want to try to get to that 20% mark, to avoid the PMI. But 15% is actually the minimum for an investment if you are not wanting to put as much out of pocket for that kind of purchase.
So for someone that's either USDA or VA eligible, then are they still looking at that 5% minimum, or how, for those specific programs, how might that change things?
Yeah, so when it comes to USDA or VA, those are still 100% financing. The big piece again is just making sure that it's going to be the primary residence, because they don't deal with anything outside of that. So your typical investment in second homes, those are going to be really conventional only. FHA is going to be one of the ones where you can still use it to purchase a primary home, but it has to be sold basically as long as the numbers work out, obviously, for the previous one. So the big piece when it comes to loan programs, for any type of second or investment home, the conventional route's probably the best and really the only one for the most part. And then as you go into the route where maybe you're going to sell your previous one and use the next home as a primary, it kind of opens that up a little bit to the programs that are normally used for a purchase.
Absolutely. So for someone that is trying to save up for that down payment, or understand kind of what they could qualify for and what they need to plan for down payment wise, what are some of the, I guess, the go-to tricks or hacks or strategies that you would advise them to keep in mind as they're starting to plan for that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it really boils down to what everyone is able and comfortable to do. I know it kind of seems like a very safe answer, but I tell people all the time, if you're someone who has a commission job, or you get bonuses, you get commission, you get some sort of extra payment or extra income on top of a base salary, I always tell people, try your best to just live off of that base salary if you're planning to do something like this, and that way any commission, any bonus, any overtime, anything that's extra, you can put away immediately because you've already budgeted out and worked on living off of that base income. Now you've got extra money. If those commissions and bonuses come in, you can set that aside. And same thing with the sale, right? If you've got equity in your home, don't forget about that, because that's a huge piece that you can basically just pick up from the sale of the current home, pick it right up and just put it right down for the purchase of the next home. So that's a very quick way and an easy way, because you can just do all that basically the day of, and they just transfer that with the title company and make it a seamless process.
So for someone that's maybe buying their second home, but maybe they had to move sooner than they thought they would because of a job change, or something where they didn't get as much equity as they had hoped, or kind of broke even on the sale of their first home, maybe walked away with something but not just a ton of money. Are there down payment assistance programs or anything like that are available to second-time home buyers, or are those pretty much all restricted to first-time home buyers?
For the most part, the down payment assistance stuff is going to be first-time homebuyer related, and it's important because I don't think a lot of people know this, which is totally fair. But the definition of a first-time homebuyer,
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, I was going to say, because this is a good one. I mean, it is, because a lot of times people think, I bought a home 10 years ago, and so I can't buy another one as a first-time homebuyer. But the definition of a first-time homebuyer is actually anyone that has had ownership or title interest, basically, like you have a title ownership in a property within the last 3 years. So, for example, if you bought a home 10 years ago, but for the last 3 years you've been renting, you're technically qualified as a first-time homebuyer again, because the last 3 years you haven't had ownership or any interest in a property. So that's the big piece that is important to remember, as some of the folks that are trying to either get back in the market or had maybe a rough experience buying a home the first time.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you haven't had experience, as long as you haven't had ownership or interest in a property in the last 3 years, you actually qualify for being a first-time home buyer again.
Which is really, really good to know, especially for people that
Absolutely.
if they had any sort of messy financial situation that they are coming back strong from. It's that extra peace of mind to know there still are a lot of programs out there for you to get the most help possible in buying that next home.
Yeah, and real quick on that one that we see a lot, and this is obviously just to be transparent and kind of relatable to people out there, because this does happen in life. You go through hardships, you go through unexpected situations with just life. I've seen people's credit scores, right? That's one of the bigger ones. So let's say you bought a home and you went through a struggle and your credit score got hit hard, or you went through a bankruptcy or something, a difficult time, which happens. It's good to know that 3-year time period, if you're renting during that time, now you requalify for a first-time home buyer. Now, the threshold to get back in as a homeowner is a little bit easier, as opposed to maybe going through and not having those first-time options available for you.
100%. So one of the other big questions that I know is on everyone's mind is the first question I always get, probably the first question you always get: how much house can I buy? And how does that differ as a second-time home buyer versus a first-time home buyer?
Yeah, so that one really just depends on, I like to call it the comfortability mark, but really it's your debt-to-income ratio, and this one is pretty simple to calculate. This is what we work off as lenders. This is what we work off for really any file or any transaction that we're working up. So essentially what you would do is you would add up all of your debts, all of your credit card payments, your car payments, student loans, anything that basically you have to pay each month. You just want to add those up and have a monthly number that it totals out to be, right? And then from there, what you would do, and there's mortgage calculators online if you're trying to figure out what the mortgage payment would be, but you basically would add the proposed mortgage payment for your house that you're trying to buy to the rest of those expenses that you do each month. So you've got basically your personal expenses and then the new mortgage payment proposed. Add those together and then divide that by your gross monthly income amount. And the important part there is gross, because that's what we look at. We don't look at net. So we look at the gross amount. And typically you want to be around 45% or below. Some programs allow 50% and even a little bit above that. But what I always tell people with that is, because it is gross, you want to remember that we're looking off of gross, but you're paying off of net, right? So if you're tight and is really pushing that limit on the gross, when you go to pay, your electricity bill, all the other items like gas, water, your utilities basically, and that's after, Uncle Sam gets to take some out and the government takes some home, you've got your net take home paying for those things. So you just want to remember to have some flexibility and some cushion built in there, and that is not to force people to try to find something lower than that, what they would like, but it's just a reminder that, hey, even though this is the threshold, it's always good to give yourself some cushion. That way, if something does happen, you won't be house poor. You can, go have some dinners with friends. You can go on, vacations for a weekend. You have some other things to do other than just pay your house mortgage or your mortgage payment, excuse me.
Absolutely. And also, one of the things too to keep in mind is there are ways to get to stretch the DTI a little bit also in the other direction. If, for instance, like I had one buyer a few months ago where his wife and he both had very good income, but his wife's credit, they didn't want to put her on the loan. And so as a result, they had plenty of money to be able to max out every bit that they could on the DTI to get, their purchasing power up. But for them, that was still a very comfortable payment because they weren't taking into account on that DTI calculation all of her income, which was, half the household income. So,
Yeah. That, and just on that one too, that's kind of the same thing going back to that commission and bonus piece, right? This is a perfect example to use that as well. If you're trying to look for a home that's, 300, 400,000 and it's kind of tight with the numbers, but you also have, a commission outside of your base income. If we're just doing it off the base income and we're tight with it, that, hey, if I'm consistently going to have some commission coming in, I've got a little bit of stuff, or I got a little bit of a cushion for stuff outside of what we're even looking at, right? So it's sometimes good to have that. And, I know a lot of people talk about trying to make more, which is fantastic. I'm all for it. Go out and make as much money as possible. But also, don't forget to reduce and decrease the debts that you have as well, right? If you've got credit cards you can pay off or pay down, if you've got, installment loans that you can get down, if you can decrease debt, you don't always have to increase income. That'll help you get that DTI a little bit better like you were talking about.
absolutely. So one question I have that I don't know, because I don't know all the marketing and, what you're allowed to say on, like, over the phone versus on a pre-recorded video that's just out there running around wild. Are you able to say, like based on kind of where rates are right now, if you're looking at a $400,000 house, assuming you don't have any debt, then you would, need a household income around X. If you have, a couple of car payments and maybe some student loans that add up to about, $1,000, $1,200 a month, then you would need to make about X. Are you allowed to say stuff like that right now?
Yeah, so what I always tell people with those questions, because that's a very valid and important question, especially early on trying to just figure things out. I would just say go back to that DTI, ratio that I was talking about. And again, there's mortgage calculators online. You can go to our website at movement.com. We've got some stuff too. But basically, you kind of, and you can search an average rate these days, but without even talking really to a loan officer, which before we go any further, you definitely want to do at some point. Don't get me wrong. You definitely want to talk to a loan officer and a lender, but to kind of get a gauge of where that is, if you've got an income of $5,000 a month and you've got, some car payments, some credit cards payments, and, maybe a student loan, whatever, use those numbers in that DTI calculation and you can almost re-engineer it and reverse it to see how much house you can afford, right? So, using the mortgage calculator, figuring out what your monthly debts are, write them down, figure out what it is. You have basically all the pieces that you can basically figure out, what your mortgage payment needs to be and or how much money you need to be making or how much debt you need to be decreasing to hit that goal of the house that you're looking to buy.
Absolutely. And also one hack I just realized is if you Google $400,000 mortgage payment or $500,000 mortgage payment or whatever, the numbers are not going to be super accurate because it won't take into account different areas or HOA or, whatever it is for a specific property. But if someone's trying to get a real general idea of like napkin math, like we're not even doing a mortgage calculator, we're just using the calculator app on our handy dandy iPhone, then like that might be also an easy way to get some starting math going.
Yeah, and it's one of those deals where I think it's good for people to do that because, again, unless you're doing this every day or it's something that, you just know about, it's not as a simple, check this, check that, but it's good to know, hey, if I'm making this, if this is what my total monthly debt is and this is roughly the mortgage payment that I'm looking to have, and you can do that these days with the mortgage calculator. Now, obviously, with the rates being a little bit higher than what they have been the last few years, that price point that the mortgage payment may be a little bit lower on the price of a home that you would basically feel comfortable with. But you can use all those to at least get an idea, and then from there, when you call me or you call a lender and you say, hey, I went through my numbers a little bit. I feel like this is where we're looking at. Can you tell me if that's accurate? And, most of the time we're going to be able to say, yeah, that looks pretty good. Or, hey, we need to have this piece added in. It may not have been calculated in, like you had said, with, HOA or some other pieces that, these online sites kind of leave out. But yeah,
and also the area.
Tool.
If you're looking at Davidson, wildly low property taxes just for that little corner of the world, which is also one of the reasons why the houses are expensive there. But then if you look at Cabarrus County, in Kannapolis downtown, really high property taxes, or in Concord downtown. Well, depending on whether it's the historical district or not, there's variation there. But see, even literally street by street, property taxes can have pretty large variation depending on where you're looking. So that too, that all those different factors then determine how much house you can get for what your budget would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the tip on this and the kind of the safe bet would be, be a little conservative. If it's play it on the high side, right? If you're not sure, what the taxes are or what the insurance may be or whatever, make sure you give yourself a little bit of room there, because it's always good to overestimate that stuff. And then if it works at that number and it comes back even lower, you're going to be okay. But it's harder to not have, numbers as accurate, and then all of a sudden they come back higher, and now you've got to reevaluate some things and figure out if that works. So just a little tip.
Absolutely. And the best way to get a really strong estimate of what you can buy is talk to a lender. It doesn't cost anything. They don't get paid until you get keys for the house. And so talk to a professional. It's a great starting point. And I'm going to put Brandon's contact info down in the description below. So be sure, if you're thinking about this and you are a second-time home buyer, be sure to reach out to him and get a better feel for what your purchasing power might be. I've got a very unrelated question that I'm also super curious to hear. What is your wildest loan story?
Oh man, this is one that I love because it's just so easy. It is the first loan that I ever did. The very first one. So I tell people all the time, like, there's some tough situations out there. There may be some loan programs that I haven't done yet, real specific ones. But if I can get this first one done the way I did, I'm pretty sure if you come to me, you're going to be okay. So I'll try to make this short, but essentially I had a lady purchasing a home I think it was in Georgia. I've got license actually, I think, in about 20 states across the country. But Georgia was where the purchase was when she was purchasing. So the property is in Georgia. The seller of that home was in California, right? So already, 3-hour time difference there. Then during basically right at the beginning and middle of the transaction, the customer had to leave the country suddenly for a family emergency. So she actually was in, I think it was like Israel or somewhere. I mean, her family, basically wherever they were. So anyway, long story short, seller is in California 3 hours behind where I am. And then my customer that's buying the home is in, I think, 8 hours ahead of me. So I every morning I would wake up and she's like, okay, here's everything I did today. I'm about to go to bed. Let me know what you need. So at nighttime, I would message her right before I go to bed and say, hey, here's everything we need. So it was a crazy timing piece, but we got it all done, man. And it was a team effort, but it just kind of shows that, when you've got people willing to do things and help you out, it can make things easier, even if you're in way opposite time zones. Way opposite. So and that's my crazy one.
And dedicated lenders help bring the transaction home, because it's very much, real estate is a team sport for sure.
People helping people, man. That's all it is. That is all it is.
Absolutely. For someone who is not a Charlottean and is considering it, what's like something you absolutely hate about Charlotte, and what's something, like, don't hold back, we spill it all on this channel. What's something you absolutely hate about Charlotte, and what has kept you here for over a decade?
So I'm a eat the frog kind of guy, in the sense that I always like to just get the bad news out, and we'll handle that. So I'll start with the bad news or the not so good stuff, and then I'll get the good. So my personal opinion, this is just me, the traffic obviously is one that, I know some places are worse, but I just personally, man, I do not like sitting still in my car when I'm on the road. I have to be moving. So that is one that frustrates me, especially like going to and from work right when the hot hours for traffic are. And then, just I feel like there's always something going on as far as like construction. Whether it's 85, 77, or just somewhere around Charlotte.
Or some random road. Like, I was trying to get on 77.
Or some random road. That's exactly right.
And I was, like, trying to turn to go down the road to get onto 77, and then all of a sudden, the entire road just drops off, and it's, like, detour, and it sent me back through some backwoods neighborhood to then try to get back on the interstate.
Yes. And I know there's probably people out there going to be like, Brandon, have you been to Atlanta? Have you been to LA? Have you been to these places? Which is fine. I have not lived there long enough to have a opinion on that traffic. I just know Charlotte, and it's just enough to get in there with me. But on the flip side, the good stuff, man, I mean, I could go on and on about that. It's one of those cities where it's blowing up, in my opinion. I mean, I was here for college, and I remember coming around and seeing where it is today, and it's completely different. You've got these pockets of areas. Huntersville is starting to blow up. South Charlotte towards where I am is big. South End, and even further down south. So there's a lot of good areas that are just, exploding with things to do. And, restaurants is another big one I love. There's many restaurants that I go to on a regular basis. My wife and I are big foodies, so the eating culture down here and the restaurant culture is great. And really, man, it's just there's a lot to do. Whenever, like, you got the Panthers, you got the Hornets, you got the Knights, you got some sporting events. Big sports guy myself, if you can tell from the background here. I got some golf stuff too. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things to do, and the city itself just offers so many opportunities from, whether it's work, career, employment, or just, casually doing things, having places to go, and just being around people and networking. So a lot of
city
good
has a
things
lot
here in the
to
Queen
offer.
City.
And I can't, so actually
Absolutely.
I've lived in both New York for a while as well as in Atlanta for a while. And there's a reason why people love, like, the traffic here does get bad sometimes, but after living both of those places,
Oh, I'm sure. You say you're one of the ones
traffic's
perfect.
a
You're like, Brandon, I don't
cakewalk
know
here.
what you're talking about, man.
Huh?
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you're like, you got it easy. I've been around. You're saying I got to been the worst one there. I was in New York.
Yeah, I'm just
Standstill up
I'm
there.
sitting, whenever there's traffic on the highway, I'm just thankful it still is moving at all. But
Look, see, I told you, man. That's just my opinion, and I know that people are gonna be like, "Look, dude, you don't even know what traffic is. Go to Atlanta, go to New York, go
see,
to LA.
okay, the
That's
one thing I will
traffic.
say on the traffic that I have no complaints about is if you're on 77, you're on most highways here, especially the commuter highways. They've got toll roads. So
Yes.
if you're willing
Yes.
to, toss $2 to the city, then all of a sudden everyone is like in a parking lot, and you're just flying 80 miles an hour down the toll road, right next to
You
them.
need to be a salesman on that for my wife, because my wife is not a fan of me taking the toll roads. I take them too much, apparently.
Got to get
She's
the
against
easy
it.
pass.
I told her, I'm like, look, my time is worth more. If I can shave off 10 minutes, 20 minutes
easy.
for traffic, like, I'll take it. I mean, it's my time. I like to have as much time as possible. And again, I just hate sitting in traffic. Can't do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Cannot do it.
Yep. Yeah, no, and the city definitely has a lot to offer. So, thank you so much for the time, Brandon. I appreciate
Yeah.
you joining and dropping knowledge bombs for all the second-time home buyers out there. If this is your first time to the channel and you are not already part of our new construction tribe, then please like the video. It helps people just like yourself find valuable information like this to make the best purchase decision for one of the largest investments you'll ever make. And also subscribe below. We share new tour videos, new videos with information about lending, about the area, about the city. And I would absolutely love to get to know you better over the coming weeks. We drop new videos every single week, and absolutely love to help you find your perfect new home. So my name is Lucas Roller. I'm your favorite realtor, and until next time, hope to show you around town.